All right, so again, we are learning about products and pricing, two of the four P's. Can somebody remind me what's another name? What's a more official name for the four P's of marketing? What was that? Well, that's one of the four P's. That's another four of the four P's. But what is a phrase that identifies the four P's? It's the marketing mix. So the four P's are your company's mix of how you're going to market your product, which includes the product itself, the price, the place, and promotion. Promotion, yeah. So those are the four P's, also known as the marketing mix. So last week we talked about the place where you sell your product and promotion, right? And this week we're talking about the product itself and the price. So we haven't really gotten into a lot of detail on that yet, because we started off talking about the marketing concept, which basically says you have to figure out what it is people want or need, right? There's no point offering a product or service if people don't want it or don't need it. And then you want to build a relationship with those customers that want or need your product. And the way you do that is by providing what they want, when they want it. So that means you have to not only promote your product and let people know about it, you have to have it available, and it has to meet their needs. And a lot of this, may just seem obvious. Like, of course, that's what a business has to do. But businesses have to do that because of how much competition there is, right? So if you're in the, ice cream industry, you've got an ice cream shop and there's another ice cream shop across the street. Why are people going to come to your ice cream shop instead of your competitor, right? Because of competition, you really need to know how to appeal to certain people to get them to come into your shop. So you have to distinguish your product either by making it a better product, providing better service, or the product itself. Well, in this case, it's ice cream, right? But in some cases, your product might be just an idea that you're selling. Again, you need to make people aware of the product, make them want to buy it, but you have to also have it available, right? If you get them to come over to your shop and they walk in and you don't have any ice cream, they're going to go across the street to your competitor. So you have to not only get them to want to buy from you, you have to be able to deliver the product, and it has to meet their expectations. If the ice cream tastes like dirt, they're not going to come back, right? So the production of the ice cream to make it a good quality product and promoting it to make people aware of it, those go hand in hand. And of course, you want to run your business legally and responsibly. All of this together is referred to as the marketing concept. Okay? So we talked about some of these terms: value, price, satisfaction. They're all related, but slightly different. And a lot of it has to do with consumer perception. What is the right price for an ice cream cone? I don't know. If your competitor is selling it for $5, is that the right price? Depends. Will your consumers think that that's the right price? It all depends. A lot of it is just based on our values, our beliefs, and our expectations. Today, my wife and I both drive electric cars, so I don't buy gas, but I still, drive by gas stations when I see, wow, $6 a gallon. I remember when gas was $1.50. In my mind, we're still in the 1980s, and gas should be $1.50 a gallon, right? My expectation hasn't changed, but if you've just started driving recently, you don't have that expectation. A lot of it is just psychological, based on what consumers believe. So a lot of companies do have these relationship marketing programs where they're, they want your information so that they can send you information, they can send you coupons, they could send you notices of new products. And they do that to try to build a relationship with you. And you know what? It's actually effective. I think the better way to build a relationship with your customers is to give them something they value. If they know that you have, let's see, where is that? If they know that they can come to you and get the best value for their money, because you can operate at a lower cost, you can give them the product that they want cheaper than they could get it anywhere else. Or if they know that your product is superior to your competitors, or if they know that you're going to give them better service, or they know that you're the only place that understands them. You're the only place that provides exactly what they want because you're serving a niche market. Then your customers are going to be loyal. You don't have to spam them and annoy them. They're going to keep coming back to you in general. But unfortunately, a lot of companies find it easier to just constantly bombard people with ads and emails and texts to say, here's a coupon, come buy from us. So either way, you're developing a relationship. I think it's better to do it sort of organically as opposed to just doing it with spam. You know what I mean by spam, right? Lots and lots of emails or texts. We talked about how Marriott, for example, operates under all these different brand names, and each brand appeals to a slightly different target market, right? And so it helps differentiate, and if you're looking to save money, the Ritz-Carlton is not the place to go. On the other hand, if you want the best hotel experience, then the Ritz-Carlton is the place to go, right? And what else did we talk about? Scanning the environment to see how things are changing. What are some of the things we might, as a marketer, might need to pay attention to that might be changing outside of the company? Yeah.
What's working for them?
Okay. Yeah, what's our competition doing, right? If they're lowering their prices, if they're raising their prices, if they're offering a new product, they're offering better service, right? What are they doing? Because that might take away some of our customers, and we might need to copy them. So you've got two gas stations across the street from each other. Did you ever notice if one raises their price, the other one raises their price? Right? They're paying attention to their competitor. That is legal for them to do it. But I'll get you in a second. If they talk to each other about changing price, that is illegal. That's collusion, it's price fixing. They could go to jail for that. So they can copy each other, but they just can't talk to each other about it. Sharing customers? In the sense that the same customers might go to both places. Is that what you mean? Okay. Yeah, that's true. So if you own one of those gas stations, how do you try to convince people to come to your gas station, not the other? Something better, right? Maybe a better price, better experience.
With the gas station.
Okay.
There's a gas station in front that has the truckers, but the other one has showers, but the one doesn't, the other one has the way to the burning.
Exactly.
So you might want to go for the perks.
Right. There might be some perks, having the extra products available there, showers for truckers. Exactly. So what else do we need to scan out there in the environment? It's the competition. It's what's happening with the economy. What is changing in terms of consumer tastes and preferences, right? Every generation's different. So I think a lot of y'all are Gen Z. And before that, there was Gen Y. the millennials, and before that was my generation, Gen X, and then before me was the baby boomers. People study these generations because even though each of us is an individual and has our own preferences and values, if you look at a generation as a whole, you see certain trends. And by understanding those trends for a marketer, that's really valuable. You know what's coming, right? Well, what have I heard? I've heard that young people, somebody was just explaining this to me. She is a Gen Y person, and she is telling me that Gen Z is really cautious about any kind of pharmaceuticals or what they put into their body, which I think is a wise thing, right? We've learned that a lot of the drugs out there, a lot of the foods we eat can actually be harmful, right? So we have to be kind of cautious and mindful, and that's great. So more so than the Gen Y generation, from what she's telling me, Gen Z is more aware of that. And if they're dealing with anxiety, they don't want to just take an antidepressant, anti-anxiety pill because they know could have really bad side effects. So interesting. If you're a drug company, you want to understand that change of values and beliefs for that generation. So again, you have to constantly scan the environment and see how things are changing. We talked about how you could apply the 4 Ps to even a nonprofit organization, right? Even nonprofits have marketing departments. Then we talked about the process we go through to decide on a purchase. And we go through these steps, typically not even aware that we are processing in this way. But we think, okay, what is the want or need that we have? What are our options? How do they compare these different options? We make a decision, we make our purchase, and then we reflect. A lot of times, if you make a large purchase, there's something called buyer's remorse. I went through this actually just yesterday or Monday. Yeah, yesterday and Monday. So on Monday, I was able to fit it into my schedule to drive home a different way and go by this store called Wise Music out here on 68. And I needed to buy something, but I also thought, I wonder if they happen to have a cornet, because I've been learning to play trumpet, and I wanted to try playing a cornet because from what I hear, it's a little bit easier. Guess what? They had one. They had a nice vintage cornet just sitting there. And I've never played one before. I don't know what they should cost. This one cost $250. I thought that's a little more than I want to spend, but it's right there. And I'm sure they valued it appropriately. When they put the price tag on it, they probably looked it up and said, okay, that's what this one is worth. So they let me play it in the store, and I said, okay, I'll take it. And then yesterday, and you know what, let me just see if I had found one online, what would it cost? So the same brand, same model, from about the same period, I saw a wide range, anywhere from about $100 to about $800. I'm thinking, okay, did I get ripped off here? Could I have gotten something similar for $100? I just paid $250. And I still don't know the answer to that. There could be a reason that they valued this one at $250. But then as I inspected it more clearly, I realized it's got some dents in it. It's kind of rusting a little bit. I'm like, I wonder if I got ripped off. So that is post-purchase behavior. Often it can lead to something called buyer's remorse, where especially if you've made a large purchase, you might then feel like regret. So the better job you do researching your alternatives, evaluating those alternatives before you make your decision, the less likely you're going to feel buyer's remorse. If people went out and they bought stock in Trump's, media company that just started to trade on the stock exchange. Did I talk about that last week? Okay. If you have followed it, it had gone up and down, and since then it just kept going down. I think the high was 60 some dollars a share, and it's down to like 25 or something. They're probably feeling some buyer's remorse. Unless they think that it's eventually magically going to go back up, but there's no indication that it will. It would be very unlikely, because in order for a stock price to go up, the company has to be making money. The company is losing money. Probably not a good investment. Okay, then we also talked about market segmentation. These are the 5 ways you can divide the overall population into groups. In fact, I gave you an example here with Fritos. Right, Fritos appeals to a slightly different audience than Doritos, and Tostitos customers are very different. Notice that Fritos and Doritos both have appeals mainly to males. It doesn't mean only to males, but that's the primary audience. The Tostitos doesn't say anything here about gender. It appeals to more upscale customers regardless of their gender. And baby boomers, people older than me, would be the target customer here for Tostitos. So how can you segment the market? By things like age, which would be demographic, by how much, if they view themselves as upper middle class, for example, that's psychographic class. However, their occupation, notice, is demographic. So sometimes it's a little tricky to figure out where these characteristics fit. Okay, in general, geographic is where you live. Demographic describes groups of people by things like age and gender. There's behavior as a consumer, which is tied to the benefit that they get from the product. There's psychographic, which has to do with your feelings and your beliefs. And then there's volume, how much of the product you purchase at a time. Do you buy industrial sized bags of Fritos, or do you buy the little bag by the cash register? So you can use these approaches to break down the entire population into specific groups and then figure out which group is most likely to buy your product. And then I think this was the last slide we covered. If you're selling to businesses, then it's different, because there aren't as many businesses as there are the 8 billion people in the world. And businesses tend to buy in larger volumes. They tend to be located in cities because they have more access to employees in cities than they would in rural areas where some consumers might live. And they tend to buy the product remotely. So they order it and get it shipped. We do that as consumers sometimes, but sometimes we pop into a store, right? Okay, so that was the review. Any questions or comments on anything so far? All right, so if you're going to be selling to businesses, you can also segment the business population. You can look at all the potential businesses that are out there and decide which ones are most likely to buy your product. How do you segment the business population? By how they use your product. Let's say you sell plastic, just like the raw plastic material. Some companies use plastic for packaging. Some of them use it to actually make toys, right? Some plastics go into clothing. There are different types of plastic and different uses, right? So if you are selling plastic, you've got different types of businesses that might want to buy it from you for different reasons. The size of the company, you've got anything from small micro businesses that maybe don't even have any employees to companies like Walmart that has over 1 million employees just in the United States, not to mention international employees too. And then what industry is the company in? So you might find that your particular product appeals to the, I don't know, the chair making industry. Not very creative, but I thought chair, so that's the first thing that came to my mind. So maybe your product appeals to the chair industry. Maybe you sell these little casters, these little wheels that go on the bottom of the chairs. And you don't want to sell to tiny companies, you want to sell to big companies that are going to order tens of thousands or at least thousands. So that's who you market to, right? Because that's who's most likely to buy your product. Now, how do you find out all this information? How do you find out what companies are out there, what they spend their money on, and what they need? It takes research. Same thing if you're selling to consumers. How do you figure out all these demographics and other things we were talking about here? How do you find people that live in a certain area and have a certain occupation and have a certain attitude? Some of it you could get from government information like the census. It'll tell you some of that information, but it's not going to tell you much about their attitude. So you might have to buy information from some marketing research company that sends out surveys, or they go and talk to people, or they buy data from the internet about people, right? Somehow you need to get a hold of that data so that you know how to reach those people. And that is market research. You can conduct it on your own, but chances are, if you're not an expert in market research, you're better off hiring a company that does have expertise that can do it for you. Okay, any comments? Any questions? So let's talk about products. Somebody please give me an example of a product. Anything? A phone? A phone. Okay. So a phone has certain aspects like the size, the shape. I don't know if it has a smell, hopefully not. At least the size and the shape, right? And it's made of certain materials. Those are all very clear, tangible aspects of the product. But there are other aspects that we don't tend to think about as being part of the product. There is the image of the retail store you walked into. That lingers with you. If you know you bought your phone at some tiny little shop that was dirty and you didn't trust the guy, you're always going to kind of remember that at the back of your head when you're using that product. But if you know you bought it at the Apple store that was bright and had all these, TV cameras, TV displays and helpful employees, that experience is going to stick with you as long as you're thinking about that product. Okay? So that is part of the product itself, the image of the store where you bought it. If the product comes with a warranty, and most electronics products do, in fact, I would say most products have some sort of a warranty where they guarantee that it's not defective, at least for a certain period of time. That's part of the product. The color is part of the product. The packaging, the instructions that come with it that tell you how to use it, or maybe the instructions you get online. The brand image, any extra attachments, right? Like if you buy an iPhone now, they don't give you the little AC adapter that plugs into the wall, right? You have to pay for that separately. It used to be included. But they do give you, I think, a charging port still. It's been a while since I bought an iPhone, but anyways, those are attachments. And then service after the sale. If it's not working right, when you go back into the store, you call them up, do they help you? That is all part of the product. And it could be the difference between whether you ever buy that product again, right? Or how you review the product. All of these things impact your overall perception. All right, we've got 4 classes of product. This helps us to understand how we might need to market our product. The first classification here is products that people really do not seek out, unsought products. Not too many people are out there looking for life insurance. Now, there are some people that either because they really care about their family and they're worried that if something happened to them, their family wouldn't have enough finances, and so they're out there and they are seeking life insurance. Or maybe, maybe there's a person that understands that life insurance actually could be a very cost-effective way to reduce your tax liability and pass information on to your dependents while you're still alive. And actually, life insurance can even be useful to you if you have a critical illness, or terminal illness, or chronic illness, while you're still alive. So people who understand a lot about life insurance, they may want to go out and buy it. Often those are wealthy, fairly financially educated people. But the average person thinks, oh, life insurance, it's too expensive, I don't really need it. I've got some at my work. That might be what's going on in the back of their mind. So if that is your product, if you sell life insurance, and people aren't out there looking for it for the most part, you have to go to them. And you have to convince them that they either want or need this product. Same thing with burial plots, same thing with timeshare condominiums. So with those types of products that people aren't typically looking for, the salespeople are usually paid on commission. And they can be kind of aggressive. That's why life insurance salespeople don't have a really good reputation, because they can be kind of aggressive. On the other hand, what if you sell a product that people buy all the time? You just pop into the store, they buy it, they don't give it a whole lot of thought. Right? A lot of our grocery products would fall into this category. Well, then you don't need salespeople. If your product is soft drinks, if retail stores have your soft drink, people are going to buy it just because it's there, right? Same thing with bread, milk, coffees. And as a consumer, you don't give a lot of thought. Oh, should I buy this bread or that? I mean, I guess if you're me, I might stand there for 10 minutes looking at the ingredients and comparing the prices, but most people would be like, oh, I want this one. And that's why I don't do a lot of shopping. It takes me forever. But those would be convenience products. On the other hand, let's say you're going to purchase something like a new vehicle. You're not just going to run into the dealership and say, I'll take that one, right? You're going to do some research. Figure out what brand you want, what model, what features you want, what color. Maybe do some reading up on that particular model and how it's performing. So you might spend more time preparing, right? Same thing if you're buying a house, you're going on a big trip. Typically don't do it impulsively. You're gonna do some research. Now let's say you're buying something like an engagement ring, or you're gonna go to a Michelin star restaurant. You might do a lot of research on that as well, because you don't want to waste your money, right? So these are the 4 classifications of products. Things we really do not seek out. Convenience products, we really don't think about a whole lot. Shopping products, where we do some research. And then specialty products, where we do perhaps even more research before we make a product purchase. So whatever your product is that you're selling, you have to think about which classification it falls into. Let's just test our understanding. What product does this represent?
Station.
What station?
Shell station.
The Shell station. And they sell
Yes.
gas. Okay. Which classification here would that fall into? Which one? Yeah, very low research effort. So it's a convenience product, right? You might, again, compare prices of this gas station versus this gas station, or you might do a search on your phone and say, okay, where's the cheapest gas? But that's about as much research as you're going to do. What about if you're buying, let's say, a Volkswagen vehicle? Yeah, that probably falls more into this shopping product. If you're buying, let's say, a top-end Mercedes, probably going to do even more research before you make that purchase, right? So that might be a specialty product. Okay, so I think you get the idea. Let's go ahead and go on to our grow activity. We'll come back to this later. Get in your groups, and we'll take 10 minutes. That. Okay, I explained that we can classify products into 4 categories, right? That's what we just talked about. And we can also classify business products into categories, but the categories are different. So let's take a look at how we can classify business products. We have 6 options. And what I'm going to do, let me get everybody's attention here. Okay. What I'm going to do is point out some of these business products over here in the picture, and you tell me which of these 6 classifications you think would be appropriate. So, for example, over here, we've got some nails. I think those are nails. Yeah, nails, or maybe they're screws. But either way, nails or screws. Which of these 6 classifications would be appropriate? One, number 1, this one? This is, the technical term is installations, but it's really referring to buildings. So I wouldn't pick that, it goes into a building maybe, right? But what else? What would be a better match?
Supplies or raw materials?
Supplies, yeah. Nails or screws would be supplies. What about, you see some sort of, I don't know exactly what this is, granite or something, or gravel? I don't even know. But anyways, some sort of mineral.
Raw material.
Is a raw material, something that came out of the earth and can be used to make a product as a raw material. Yes, that would be right. How about this rebar here? How might you classify the steel rebar?
Component parts and materials?
Yes, yes, it's a component part because what do they use that for?
Concrete.
Concrete. You put it in the concrete to make it stronger, right? So it's a part, it's a component of that reinforced concrete. All right, what about these skyscrapers here? I don't know, are those skyscrapers, these tall buildings, let's say? They're buildings, right? So that would be number 1, installations. What about these vehicles over here? The equipment, number 2, exactly. And what do we have left? Oh, if you, let's say you needed somebody to come and use this equipment for you, and you didn't own the equipment and you didn't have the expertise, you could hire a company to do it for you, right? So that would be a service. So this is how you would classify business products. All right. As you're developing a product, there's a process you go through. Just like there's a process when you sell a product, there's a process when you buy a product, there's a process you go through when you develop a product. You want to start with thinking, what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to attract more customers by offering a product that will appeal to a certain group? Are we trying to sell more products to our existing customers? Are we trying to cure cancer? What is it that we want this product to achieve? And that would be your goals, right? Because that then dictates how you do everything else. You have to be clear about where you're headed. Then you come up with ideas. If you remember when we talked in the previous chapter about decision making, I talked about the power of brainstorming. You get a group of people to just throw out ideas and bounce ideas off of each other without criticizing one another or the ideas. Same thing here. A lot of products come from creativity. Somebody's saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a product that solved this particular problem? For example, let's say you're allergic to peanuts. Wouldn't it be cool if your phone could tell you that there are peanuts in the area and that you should stay away? That would be cool. I don't think that technology quite exists. There are electronic noses out there, so maybe it does exist, but I don't know of any phones that have that capability, right? So maybe by identifying a problem, you could creatively come up with a product that would solve that problem. But it takes ideas. And that might mean getting a group of people into that creative brainstorming mindset where they just throw out ideas, even if some of them are not really practical or feasible. Until you go through those different ideas and then decide which ones actually are worth pursuing. Once you pick an idea, you develop it, right? You make an actual prototype of that product to demonstrate that it's possible. And at that point, you could test market it. You could bring in potential customers and have them try it out. Or you could actually sell it in a certain area and just see how it does. And then once you're confident that, hey, this product works, people are interested in it, then you launch. Maybe you launch just in your county and then you expand, or maybe you go big time. If you feel like your competitors are going to jump on it and they're going to start taking your market share, maybe you get enough investors to give you money, so you just launch nationwide. And that way it'll make it harder for your competitors to take your customers. So that is the process of developing a product. It could take years in some cases. Any questions or comments? Again, market research is a really important part of this. And so you probably want to hire a market research company to help you make some of these decisions. What if you're developing a service? You come up with an idea that, let's see, I guess the example I just mentioned is kind of a service. If your phone can identify allergens, peanuts, that would be a service, right? You do it with software, an app on the phone, but then the app provides a service. But let's think, what would be another service? Let's say, I don't know, let's say it's a mobile car cleaning service. You're gonna come to people's homes and clean their car at their home so they don't have to go to the car wash. That's a service, right? If that is the product you're gonna be offering, that service, would you use a similar process here? Would you still want to know what is your goal? Come up with different ideas about what actually you could do for the customer. Screen those ideas, develop it, test market it, and then start offering your service? Yeah, it'd be the same process, whether it's a physical product or service. Now, there are people and companies whose job title is product manager. So that's basically a marketing function. If, let's say you worked at Mattel, I'll go with Mattel. Like the Barbie movie last year was a huge hit, right? I'm sure Mattel has sold a lot of Barbie dolls since that movie came out. And they were selling plenty of them before that, I'm sure, as well. But if you work at Mattel and you are the product manager for the Barbie products, even though Mattel is the parent company, right, and you work within that company, you're in charge of a very powerful brand. And you would make the decisions, which Barbie dolls are we going to come out with and which Ken dolls are we going to come out with? What should the price be? How many should we produce? You'd be over that entire product, which would be, pretty interesting. Pretty powerful position. Probably get paid really well, especially with such a large product line like that. And so that's what a product manager does. They oversee a particular product on behalf of the company. Questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to the product life cycle. So this is an important concept. I think it's pretty interesting. Every product has a life. When it's first introduced, brand new product that has never been on the market before, the sales tend to be low. This line here is the sales revenue. So it starts basically at 0 and, picks up as the product is promoted. But this line here is the profit. Initially, there is 0 profit. In fact, there's a loss. You think about it, if you're going to launch a product, you have to develop the product. You have to produce the product before you can really start selling it. There's a lot of cost that goes involved. So you're starting off with only cost. And then when you start selling your product, as sales go up, hopefully you cover enough of your cost that you reach a break-even point. Where now you haven't made a profit, but you're no longer losing money. And then you start to go into the profit area. You get above 0, now you're making a profit. So you've sold this much and you've only profited that much. That's at the introduction phase. An example of a product that is still in that phase, you can look it up. I had never heard of it, but apparently this is a real product. Airwaves is a chewing gum that is also a decongestant. And I don't know about you, I don't think I would buy that product. If I want a decongestant, that's one thing. If I want chewing gum, that's another thing. I don't think I would buy a product that's a combination decongestant and chewing gum. But maybe some people do want that. And so that is a real product out there. But it hasn't quite taken off. And maybe it never really will. Then we've got the growth stage. This is where now, look at what happens to sales. Your sales are increasing really quickly. And profits are also increasing, not as fast as sales. Notice that sales are kind of going, well, not straight up, but like a 90-degree angle. No, 45-degree angle. But the profits are not growing as quickly. And in fact, they kind of plateau here. So yes, you're getting more profitable, but you're having to sell more and more product to do that. An example of that would be something like internet security software. That's something basically every phone and every computer needs, but most people already have it. right? So there's not a lot of extra market. It maybe is still growing, but not nearly as quickly. And then a product gets into the maturity phase. At this point, it gets harder and harder to find new customers. You've pretty much already saturated the market. So you notice that sales start to taper off and profits start to fall because you need to now spend more and more money trying to get those customers. More advertising. Maybe you have to lower your price. So your costs are going up, your prices are going down, and you're losing your profits. Coca-Cola would be an example of that. As I was saying earlier, a lot of young people are really careful about what they put in their body, and maybe they're not drinking sugary drinks like Coca-Cola. So what does Coca-Cola have to do? They have to come out with other drinks, other versions of Coca-Cola, but other things like, I think Coca-Cola owns Tropicana, which is an orange juice company, right? So they have to come out with other products that are still in demand while their older products are losing. That's why they'll come out with new and improved products, or like with technology, they keep upgrading the software, the iOS and that sort of thing. And then you go into a decline phase. At this point, very, very few people want your product. I don't know if anybody remembers CB radios, because they went away, what, in the 90s or something, a long time ago? But truckers would use those as they were driving down the highway to communicate with one another. Now they all have cell phones and Wi-Fi and satellite dishes and other ways to communicate. So they don't need CB radios. There's no market for that anymore. So that product would not be profitable at all today. Sales, as you can see, would be going down. So every company needs to be aware of this phenomenon. And hey, maybe they launch a product and it's doing great, but it's not going to keep doing great forever. They're going to have to find ways when their product starts to hit this maturity phase, they need to have a new product already into the introductory or growth phase. So as you go through this life cycle, you see it again here, you need to adapt your strategy. You might need to lower your prices. You might need to increase your advertising. But do something to try to keep those profits coming in. So any questions or comments on the product life cycle? All right. So we've covered products. Let's get into pricing. As I said, I do want to leave some time to talk about the business plan presentation as well. Pricing. What's the right price for your product? Again, a lot of it is psychological. Who decided that coffee is supposed to be $4 for a cup of coffee? Starbucks. Before that, it was $1, $1.50, and Starbucks came along and said, no, coffee's now $4. People went along with it. But it's arbitrary. I mean, okay, you factor in the cost of the coffee, that's a factor. But then there could be a huge profit margin. You don't know as a consumer. If you buy an Apple iPhone, maybe it costs Apple $400 to make that phone. Why are they charging you $1,000? Profit. So is that really the right price? No, that's just the price that they can get away with. And so they do. So as the producer of the product, how do you decide what's the right price? Again, you would look at your costs. You would look at supply and demand. You would look at consumer perception. What do they think your product is worth? And here are some different strategies. The penetration strategy is where you have a very low price. You launch a product at a low price, you're gonna sell a lot more of it, right? Because most people factor price into their decisions. Some people don't, but most people do. So if you have a low price, you'll sell a lot of product and you'll penetrate a larger portion of the market before your competitors can try to take those customers. In fact, your competitors might say, you know what? We don't even want to compete with that low price. We're just not even going to try. So that would be one strategy. Another strategy is you start with a high price. That's price skimming. That's why a brand new iPhone, the latest model is going to be $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever. But then a year later, that same model is probably cheaper, because now they're trying to get rid of them and sell the newer one. So with price skimming, you start with a higher price and then you lower it as you go through the product life cycle. You're trying to get as much profit off the top. We go back here, remember how you're losing money with a new product typically? So with price skimming, charging a high price, you're trying to recover that initial investment and get to a break-even point faster with a higher price. Now, it might not work, because if the price is too high, nobody's going to buy your product. You want to do it high enough that you can sell as much as you want to sell initially, and then over time, when you're having a harder time finding customers, then you lower the price. That is price skimming. There's price bundling, saying, oh, okay, if you buy this product, we'll give you a discount on this one. Or if you buy these two products together, you get a better deal. Then there's odd even pricing. We see this all the time. Most companies use odd pricing. Do you ever wonder why every price ends in like 99 cents, like $5.99, $99.99? Why don't they just round it off to $100, right? Well, there's a reason. Why do you think they would put the price at $99.99 instead of $100?
It's cheaper.
It looks cheaper, right? It's like, oh, it's less than $100, a penny less, right? It's psychology. There are some stores that will do even pricing. I kind of find that refreshing. It's a little easier for my brain if I can just know what the price is, not have to round up. But most stores use the odd pricing because it works. Would you rather go to the 99-cent store? I don't know if they have those here. In Southern California, they were really popular, the 99-cent store. And then there was the dollar store. You save money if you go to the 99-cent store, right? Not much, it's only a penny. But the perception is that it's cheaper. So that's odd and even pricing. Then there's prestige pricing. Charging a high price to make it look like your product is more valuable. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, right? Here's an example of that. A lot of universities now, even public universities, sometimes charge tuition of like $20,000 a year or more. But then they throw in all kinds of scholarships and grants to lower the cost of admission. Well, why don't they just lower the price in the first place? Part of it is prestige. They're afraid if they drop their price, their tuition, they would look like they're not as good of a university. So they'll have this high sticker price and then offer these scholarships and grants to make it more affordable. It also allows them to charge foreign students the full price. So they can kind of milk those consumers. They could just lower their price and say we have an extra fee for foreign students, right? But instead, they want to make themselves look more prestigious and say, we charge as much as Stanford does. We must be just as good as Stanford. That's all perception. So these are some different pricing strategies. Any questions or comments? All right. Let me just see. Okay, we just have a couple slides left. So we'll wrap up, we'll do our matching activity, and then with the remaining time, I want to talk some more about the upcoming assignment. All right, actually, I've already mentioned this before. It used to be that advertising was through radio, TV, newspapers. And so you had one message that you would be putting out to a large number of people. But today, with technology, we're able to target messages to the individual. So that when you see an ad that pops up on your browser or in your social media, it's because it knows where you live, what you're interested in, your demographics, what your purchase history is. It knows all of that. And so then that dictates what message they send to you individually. It might even have your name in the ad. We might even start to see ads with our face or our friends' faces in the pictures because AI could do that now. It's freaky, right? We might even get advertisements that we think are coming from a friend. Like we think it's an email from a friend and it's really an advertisement because they know enough about us to target the message that specifically. And so there are still some of these traditional ads, but who watches the network TV channels anymore, right? Not a whole lot of people because there's so many other options. As a consumer, you also have more power today, right? You can go into the store. I did this just the other day in Target. I think I was in Target. No, where was I? I don't know. I was somewhere buying something. I don't remember what it was. And I was thinking, is this a good price? Let me see if I could get it cheaper at Target. That's what I was thinking. And oh, yeah, I was at Safeway. And I was thinking, would this be cheaper at Target? And I realized it would be. And then I thought, okay, how much cheaper? And I decided to go ahead and buy it at Safeway anyways. But I had that power as a consumer to compare prices right there while I was in the store. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could have just bought it from Target online while I was standing in Safeway. So not only do marketers have more power, we do too, if we want to take the time to use it. Okay, so we'll do our matching activity, and that'll leave us a little bit of time to talk about the business plan assignment. We've got 10 learning objectives here. This is one image. This is one image. The rest of them, I think, are fairly clear. So, of these images, which one do you think relates to the marketing concept that we talked about earlier? Any ideas? I'll zoom in so you can see these a little bit closer. Which one?
The circle?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
It relates for sure.
That's number 3.
Yeah, marketing mix would be a better match for this one, the 4 Ps. So, but they're all related, right? All these concepts are related. Okay, let's go on to, how about marketing strategy? Good match. Social media, okay. That could be part of your marketing strategy, right? For sure, influencers especially. We talked about marketing mix. How about buying decisions? How do we make buying decisions? Price? Price is a factor, okay. Like there's a price. How about market segmentation? Dividing up the market into groups. Consumers.
Middle right.
Middle right, yep. Yep, we see some of the ways we could do consumer market segmentation. How about the products?
Bottom middle.
Middle, okay. We see a bunch of different products, mostly probably convenience products, right? You wouldn't put a whole lot of thought into. How about the process of creating new products? Move this out of the way. Top left or top right? Top left? Yeah, market research would be definitely an important part of creating new products. How about the product life cycle?
The middle, right, not those, middle, right, where the graphs at.
This one here?
Yeah.
Yep, this shows the stages of the product life cycle. And pricing. Okay, there's that odd pricing, right? They could have just said $400, but they wanted to say $399.99. And last one says trends. Yeah, social media is definitely a trend. Here we see how everything we do from a marketing standpoint should support the overall strategy of the organization. So you have to think, what resources do we have? What are we capable of producing? And what can we produce that would be better than our competitors? And that should be something that then supports your strategy. And what we see up here, I know it's a little hard to see, but this all illustrates the marketing concept up there. So, okay, we are done with the chapter. Oh, we've got 9 minutes left. That's good. Any questions or comments?